Hi guys, let's start with soup now. We've done stocks, we've done sauces, now let's go into soups. Serving soup at the beginning of a meal provides an opportunity to make a great first impression. Preparing and serving soups helps you learn more about basic culinary techniques, seasoning, garnishing, and serving foods. There are two basic kinds of soups: clear soups and thick soups. Clear soups include flavored stocks, broths, and consommes, like chicken noodle soup, minestrone, which is kind of like a tomato-based vegetable soup, which you're going to make. Onion soup. Thick soups include cream soups like cream of potato, which you're going to make, cream of broccoli, cream of mushroom. Also, bisques and chowders are a form of um, a thick soup. And then you have pureed soups, which are a combination. It's sort of a thick soup where you're actually thickening by pureeing the ingredients in it. Things along the lines of split pea or something, and tomato bisques. A lot of those are done by puree as well. Okay, there we go. Many variations of basic soups include dessert soups, which is this dish here is a Filipino soup made from coconut milk, milk fruits, and tapioca pearls, served hot or cold. A fruit soup like gazpacho, typically made with a tomato base. International soups like borscht and vichyssoise. Borscht is a beet soup, and vichyssoise is a French soup of pureed leeks, onions, potatoes, cream, and chicken stock, and a lot of times served cold. Hot soups include Vietnamese pho, and you know, pho being a rich beef stock with noodles and thinly shaved beef, or French onion soup made with beef stock and topped with melted Gruyere cheese. Traditional regional soups such as New England clam chowder, which is a cream sauce based, or Manhattan clam chowder, which is a tomato red sauce base, or gumbo, which is a Creole soup made with okra and shrimp. Soups must be cooked properly. Most soups are cooked at a gentle simmer and stirred occasionally. If a soup is cooked for too long, the flavor can become flat and nutrients will be lost. Adding chopped fresh herbs, lemon juice, or a dash of hot pepper sauce to a soup can brighten its flavor. Finishing techniques are important when preparing soups for service. For example, the line cook should remove the surface fat off the soup before service by blotting it with the spoon. Soup should also be garnished just before service, because if you garnish a soup ahead of time, the garnish can be destroyed the longer it sits there. So typically, we're going to garnish just before service. Stocks or broth is a basic ingredient in clear soups. Broth is made from a combination of water, vegetables, beef, fish, chicken, or veal, mirepoix, and bouquet garni, kind of like our stocks. It should be clear to pale amber in color and have a flavor of the major ingredients. One type of clear soup is a consomme, and you are going to make a consomme. It's a rich, flavorful broth or stock that's been clarified. Consomme is made by adding a mixture of ground meats with mirepoix, tomato, eggs, whites, and onion to bouillon or stock. This mixture is called clear meat. And this picture here on this slide is a burnt onion. Don't ask me to pronounce it in French. That's what the presentation was. I was trying to do it and it wasn't going to happen. I have my notes here and I can't pronounce it. Cut the onion in half and then char it on a flat top or in a saute pan on a range or grill in dry heat, no fat. Just char that. It adds flavor to a consomme, and you have to make sure it doesn't get too burnt, because it'll add an off flavor to your consomme. You slowly simmer the mixture until the impurities come to the surface, trapped in the raft, which is the floating layer of egg whites, meat, and vegetable solids and fats. Remove the raft, and the result is a pure, clear, or clarified stock. A good consomme should be clear and aromatic, and should emphasize the flavor of the main ingredient. If it's too weak, the meat or poultry glaze may be added to enhance the flavor. So you can add a glaze to add flavor if necessary, but it shouldn't be if you've done your stock right. Two kinds of thick soups, cream soup and puree soups. Both puree and cream soups are made with a liquid and either sachet of spices or bouquet garni. Then a pureed main ingredient to provide a main flavor is blended into the base. The main difference between a puree and a cream soup is that the cream soups are usually thickened with an added starch, such as a roux, like we've been thickening our sauces with. Puree soups are thickened by the starch found in the pureed main ingredient, such as potatoes. Pureed soups are coarser than cream soups, but should be liquid enough to pour easily from a ladle. Cream soups must be thick with a smooth texture. They should never be boiled. Boiling can cause the milk fat to break down, making the soup thin and watery, like when your sauce is broke. Garnish cream soups with a bit of the soup's main ingredient. For instance, place a few small blanched broccoli flowerets on the top of a cream of broccoli soup. Excuse me. Thick soups. Bisques are another kind of thick soup. Bisque is a cream soup usually made from pureed shells from shellfish such as lobster, shrimp, or crab. The shells are pureed along with vegetables, making the texture slightly grainy. The bisque is then strained, garnished, and served. A properly prepared bisque should be a pale pink or red color and have the flavor of the shellfish. Another important thing I want to talk about bisque is typically, depending on where you're at, if you went in and you said, I'm going to make a garlic bisque or a tomato bisque or something along those lines, many of the classical chefs will laugh at you. Because to be a true bisque, it must be from a shellfish, lobster, shrimp, or crab. Those are the only true bisques. Yet we hear all the time, you go to the store, you can see it. Campbell's has a tomato bisque. I've made garlic bisques. So more modern chefs are using the same technique and calling it bisque, but typically bisques are lobster, shrimp, or crab. And I just want to give you that rider, because the more modern we get, the classics are still important. And when you guys get out and go into the industry or something, if you do, you could get chastised for calling a tomato soup a tomato bisque. Even though it's made with the same principles, they're going to want to know what shellfish the tomato comes from. And believe me, chefs are unmerciful when it comes to hazing and bullying. All right, we talked about those. Let's go up to chowders. Chowders are hearty, thick soups made in much the same way as your cream soups. Chowders are not pureed before the cream milk is added. They're usually thickened with roux and typically include large pieces of the main ingredient, usually a potato chowder or seafood, and garnishes. Sometimes there's corn chowder, lots of different soups, different names, different soups. But corn chowder, clam chowder, potato chowders, those are thicker, heartier soups. So think larger portion, larger pieces of the main ingredient, and some sort of garnish. So making a basic broth, you're combining the meat or vegetables and water, and you're bringing it to an even simmer. You add the mirepoix, the bouquet garni. You simmer for an appropriate cooking time depending on the main ingredient in the broth. Beef, veal, game, 2 to 3 hours. Fish, 30 to 40 minutes. Vegetables, 30 minutes to an hour. Skim and strain, cool and store, or finish with garnish for service. Now that's making a broth. Okay, so that's a little bit different than a stock. The difference pretty much is stocks are typically made with the bones of these products. Remember, we made our chicken stock, we used chicken bones, chicken carcasses, and some chicken meat, old meat we were getting rid of. But typically, if you're using meat, you're making a broth. Okay, you're not using bones. Bones make a stock, meat makes a broth. So by default, your broth is going to be a little bit more stronger with the main ingredient flavor. I mean, chicken meat is going to make it a more chicken flavor in your broth than in a stock. So chicken stocks usually, when you reduce them and fortify them, then you can make something that's more flavorful. But typically, you have to add to stock, where a broth you might not have to. Okay, if you think about the difference there between stock and broth, that's where your differences come from. Okay, consomme. Now we are going to make a consomme, so listen carefully. And I'm going to have another little presentation on making consomme. We made a consomme in class, and we took pictures, but there's still pictures. So I'm going to bring that up like the stock one that I posted. We're going to post that with part of this module. I hope to have it up before the module launches this weekend. But to make a consomme, you're going to combine the ground meat, mirepoix seasonings, tomato products, a burnt onion, and egg white. Blend in the stock. Bring the mixture to a slow simmer, stirring frequently until a raft is formed. Once the raft is formed, so once those ingredients start coming to the top and they form a raft, and it's called a raft for a reason. If you think about what a raft is usually something you built, or now they have the inflatable rafts that you're sitting in a lake or a pool or a river on a raft, right? You're sitting on top of the water. Okay, so that's why they call this a raft. But this raft happens to be made from the meat and the onion and the egg. The egg is what helps it rise to the top and hold the raft together. Think of the egg as the rope that ties your sticks together, or the air and the plastic stitching that keeps the nylon inflatable inner tubes rafts together. Think along those lines. It's going to hold it together from falling apart in a bunch of little pieces and just becoming a soup. So a raft is going to come to the top. So you're going to stir it until, now when it comes to the top, you stop stirring it, because the more you stir it, the more cloudier it becomes. So once that raft comes to the top, you're going to stop stirring it. Okay. You're going to break a hole in the raft and let it continue to simmer. That little hole allows it to keep working, and to make sure that underneath the raft is also clarifying as well. Then you're going to strain using a stock pot with a spigot is the best option. So you're straining it out from underneath the raft, not getting it past the raft. But we can tilt the pot and we can use a ladle and ladle it out of the raft, and that's how you guys are going to do it, because we don't have stock pots with spigots in here for everybody, and you guys aren't making that much. We put down that you're going to make a quart, 2 pints, so 4 cups, and that's about the smallest amount that we could successfully clarify with a raft. Otherwise, it gets to be too small of an amount. So we're going to do a quart of consomme, and you guys will see that, and we'll show you, talk about how garnishing it. After that comes off and we've drained it, we can cool it, store it, or we can finish it with a garnish and serve it right away. We can cool it, store it, and reheat it carefully. Okay. Once again, not boiling it, but you've already pulled out the impurities, so you could bring it up to a boil without really causing any cloudiness. But you want to be careful. You don't want to bring that up to a boil. And then you're going to garnish it. And you garnish it with something colorful, confetti or brunoise, bell peppers. Maybe bell peppers you got to watch though, because they can cloud it up. A red onion's nice. A little parsley, cilantro. Some people like the cilantro or the Italian parsley. And you just float that leaf in there. Sometimes they put it in the bowl and then they pour that rich hot consomme right over the top. And we'll talk about that more in class as well. Good consomme should be crystal clear, aromatic, and emphasize the flavor of the major ingredients. So if I'm making a duck consomme, I should have the flavor of duck into my stock. Chicken consomme, beef consomme should be in my stock. Vegetable consomme, not so much. You're not really going to be successful in a vegetable consomme. You can make a vegetable consomme, but you are going to need a meat and protein, like the eggs, in order to suck out the impurities. That's what the eggs and the proteins are doing in the raft. So to make a raft for vegetable stock, you are no longer making it vegetarian. You're adding chicken meat or duck meat or beef or something to that stock and causing it to clarify, but that would then defeat the purpose of a vegetable. So you don't really see a lot of vegetable consommes. Okay, you can in a can, I guess, of course, but you're not going to see very much. All right, clarifying a stock. You're going to use egg whites, a mild acid such as the tomato or lemon juice, a browned onion, whip egg whites until the whites are foamy, and add these ingredients to the stock when the stock's about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, kind of like in this picture. Simmer gently at medium heat for half an hour or more. When the raft of the egg structure of the scum has gathered, be careful not to stir the raft. Remove the raft by letting it settle completely to the bottom as it cools, and then pouring off the clarified stock. And discard any raft that's left. Now, we're not going to get to all these techniques in class. You may try some of them at home. We're definitely not going to get to all these at home, however, or in class. Saute in major flavorings such as mushrooms or cream of mushroom soup in a little butter or oil. Add flour to make the roux and cook for a short time to remove the starchy taste. Add stock or any vegetables and then simmer until tender. Stock also includes aromatics, but these are separate aromatics being added to the finished stock and other ingredients. Puree and strain the mixture. Add additional stock to adjust the consistency as necessary, and add cream and garnish before serving. I got all that? Yes, okay, good. Making bisque. Okay, you're going to sear the crustacean shells. That would be your lobster, your shrimp, or your crab shells in fat or sweat in a stock. If you don't want to add the fat, you can do that. Add mirepoix and sweat some more. Add tomato product. Reduce until the mixture is sec or almost dry. That's what that means. Reduce it until it's very dry. Add the stock and sachet of spices. Mix in the roux. Simmer and skim. Discard the sachet of spices or bouquet garni when you have the desired flavor. Strain the soup and puree the solids. So that in eating a bisque, you're actually eating the shells of the crab, the lobster, and the shrimp. Okay. The solids that are pureed in this step include crustacean shells, which is why the soup must be strained, because you don't want any chunky shells. They can hurt and irritate. Remix the liquid to a proper consistency. Remix refers to combining any reserved liquid that was strained out in step 9 with the pureed solids. It may not be necessary, but just in case. You may not use all the liquid that you reserved, but you might. Strain and then cool and store, or finish and garnish with cooked reserved meat from the crustaceans. So yes, you're going to garnish a lobster bisque with a piece of lobster on top. You're going to garnish a shrimp bisque with a piece of shrimp on top. And it might be a shrimp, but minus the shell, because you've used that shell inside the bisque. So see, if I took 5 pounds, let's say I took a pound of, well, let's get some big good shrimp. I use 16 shrimp, so I have under 16 pieces in a pound. So let's say I get 15 1-ounce pieces of shrimp. Pretty good size shrimp right there, right? Okay. 1 ounce is pretty good. If I peel them, and I used all the peels in my bisque, and yeah, I probably have to use more than just those 15 peels. But now I have 15 pieces of shrimp I can garnish on top of my bisque. I can float one right on top. And the bisque is thick enough that it should hold up. it won't sink to the bottom unless you leave it there for a long period of time. So if you put that shrimp right on there and the waiter or waitress takes that right out to the table, or you serve it right away at home, that shrimp should still float for you right there. So it won't be a problem. Remember, a properly prepared bisque should have the flavor of the crustacean and a pale pink or red color. All right, guys, that's it on these soups. We are going to, in class and at home, you're going to make a minestrone soup. You're going to make a cream of potato soup. And you're going to make a consomme. Now, at home, you have some options. If you need to change some of what I said here, if you needed to change a soup or modify a soup, we can work on that. Please reach out to me if you need some assistance in modifying soups or in what to put in it. For example, typically, and I'll tell you guys this, a gumbo and a minestrone soup, a gumbo being that Creole, it's almost like a minestrone, but it's French Creole style, okay? And it usually has a little rice in it. They're typically what we also refer to as Musco soups. Anybody know what a Musco soup is? Okay. Musco soup is anything in our refrigerator that must go. So think about that. Some of the best soups I've ever made in the restaurant. I remember one year I don't even remember what restaurant it was at. I was thinking about that today. I can't remember. I want to say I was up at the community college and we'd served baked potatoes for lunch the day before. I don't know whether it was a stuffed baked potato or whether we had a steak and baked potato special or what for lunch. But we had some leftover baked potatoes when I was at the community college. And so the next day I took those baked potatoes and I cut them up, cut them out, hollowed the potato out. I didn't want the peel because once we bake that, it's a little chewy, little fibrous, and I don't want to put that in the soup. But I took a spoon and hollowed out the potato portion into the pot and added some milk and some cheese and added some bacon, and I made a stuffed baked potato soup. And everybody in the school wanted that recipe. They were coming in for days looking for that recipe. And it's hard to explain to people that the first ingredient is leftovers. So think about that a little bit. But a lot of times, your first ingredient in soup is a lot of times leftovers. If mom's ever made you soup at home, chances are it's something she had leftover pot roast, leftover something. A lot of times they're made from scratch. I have a friend that makes me chicken and dumplings, which is kind of like a soup, right? Fresh chicken each time. She cooks 2 whole chickens and makes chicken and dumplings, and I usually get some, okay? Because she makes it really well, and I hate making dumplings. So she makes a really good chicken and dumplings. I let her do it, okay? But yeah, soups typically must go soup. Is anything in the refrigerator that must go. So when we come up with a minestrone recipe, and it is on here for you, if you need to substitute, we're going to try putting some fresh green beans in ours. You don't have fresh green beans, you want to put a can in there, fine. But remember, we're going to talk about adding canned versus the fresh green beans. It's going to be added later on in the process. They don't need to cook to tenderize. The cans are a ready-to-eat food you open, drain, and eat. Okay? So if you added a canned bean or and we're going to use some canned beans here at school as well, but if you added a canned bean or you added a canned green bean to it, you're not going to need to cook those, so they don't add as early in the process. Because if you do, you'll break them down and they'll just turn into mush. And that's not what you're looking for in the soup. So reach out to me if you're changing any ingredients. Other than that, follow the recipe. When we go to potato, we're doing a potato leek soup. It's going to be a cream potato leek soup. I got a ton of potatoes here at school, so we're getting rid of. And potatoes are cheap for you guys at home. You can omit the leek if you can't find them or you don't want to go out and buy some leeks. They're not as cheap. They're not super expensive. A leek, as you know, it looks like a green onion, looks like a scallion or a green onion. It's just on steroids because it's so big around. It's like an inch to, I've seen them 1.5 inches, 2 inches around. So, and you're only going to use the white part of the leek, which the Chinese will tell you is the only real part. The green part's not even good enough to feed the pigs, is what they used to tell me. All right. And we're going to make a consomme. And if you're at home, you can use any stock you want. I have not determined yet which one we're going to make here at school yet. More than likely, it's going to be a chicken or a duck consomme because I have quite a bit of those stocks in my freezer that we can clarify. So we will probably be making those at home. It doesn't matter. If you go out and buy yourself some chicken stock and turn that into a consomme, you'll also need some chicken to ground up, or buy some fresh ground chicken. If you're going to do a beef stock, you can use fresh ground beef. You want to watch your fat content. You want to lean, lean, lean. Okay, the fat you're adding is only going to be from the egg because you're trying to take the fat and impurities out of the stock. So using a 70-30% ground beef is a lot fattier. The frozen chubs that you get or the refrigerated chubs you get at the grocery store. Chubs they're not like burger patties. They're wrapped in a tube almost. That's what we call chubs. If you're using that, you got to watch the fat content because if you put a 70-30 into your consomme, you're going to be really, really, really working hard to get that to clarify. You need a lean meat in there. So watch the recipe that we be posting as well. Okay, guys, as always, reach out to me if you have any questions. Teams, email, remind, any way you can, and have some fun making soups. This is good soup weather. Take care. Have a great day.